Hello.
Hi, Muthu.
Sumanthri, thank you so much for a great presentation and also for all the work that you've done to document the history of the Sinhala. I've got two questions. First one, your research seemed to start from the letter forms that were used in newspapers, probably a century or so ago. How does the letter forms today compare in comparison to the original handwritten forms in the Ola list? Are there any changes in the form of the letter? Has anyone done any, or is anybody doing any research in that space? That's the first question. The second question is, one of the challenges I have when I work with Sinhala typefaces is there's some concentration of details of stroke at certain points. For example, the ch and the j, for example, the loops and the I is concentrated on one corner of the letter, and then you have a big counter at the thing. And when you do, let's say, a heavier weight of the face, it becomes a problem handling that area. Have you seen anybody finding a solution to that or finding different ways of doing that?
Yeah, okay, I'll start with the second question. I'll answer the second one first. Yes, there is definitely a lot of congestion within the letters, and to identify that was another reason why we wanted to study on display typefaces, because the display typefaces will actually show the issues. Because it's not just the letter that we use for text, and if you understand that, you'll also see, if you look at it, I'm learning from the past. I'm not discovering. Okay, because I strongly believe that I cannot do something new without knowing my roots. So as a result, what I'm doing is whatever forms that we'll be coming up with would be definitely coming from what I have seen. Surely there'll be other people who can come up with certain things after discovering the visual thresholds and so on. But we will, I think, most probably after Ravindu's research and Supun's, will be able to understand the amount of manipulation that we can do to have the features, the required features of the letter. Sometimes you don't need a loop, but you can have a simple stroke to indicate that. I'm sure when it comes to a small device, we have to think about those things. So that would be a solution that we'll be looking at. And the first question was, I think I forgot. Oh yes, the visual formation. Yeah, so my study has always started from the introduction of the printing press, because, as you said, this was another thing that I wanted to do on the calligraphy forms and to study that. But obviously it's completely something else to the research, but surely there will be, I think there are potential PhDs or MPhils coming up. But since Sinhala is not a very popular script for calligraphy, but definitely there is a lot of data that we can take from the Ola leaves, and right now nobody has yet touched on the letter forms within the Ola leaves. And but we had a few students as undergraduates who had been studying, so hopefully they will take those forward, because they've one thing that I know for sure is there was definitely a school that had taught Sri Lankans to write on Ola leaves and a different style. So we have identified 4 distinct features, distinct characters of Ola leaves, which is Singha, Kaka, Hasti, and one more. So very clearly based on the formation, but I still haven't come across literature or written literature on how they were grouped. We are looking at the visual formation, and people have grouped it. I'm sure if somebody started researching on it and maybe start to read the Ola leaves itself, we might find the hidden styles. And I must say, within that also, you can just drown in the areas that you can touch on. Like, for example, the letter forms that are used by native doctors are completely a different style. And the the flowing is different to another script if you give a pen. And the closest that I've come to calligraphy is identifying the ink and ink blocks and the ink traps within the Sinhala in the early 17th century, how we were introduced. That was also the time that we were introduced to pen and ink and paper. So as a result, you could actually figure out how, with the blots and the drops and the blocks, you'll be able to identify the character and the shape of the letter, or where the calligrapher had stopped the pen, or there's a lot you can do. And I hope I answered. Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for the awesome presentation.
Thank
It was
you.
very informative.
Thanks.
I just wanted to ask, add into his question as well, that you were talking about calligraphy and metal fonts, right? For Sinhala, is that what you found?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I just wanted to ask those mastheads of the newspaper. They are mostly done on, let's say, woodcut or lithopress?
Woodcut.
Woodcut.
Most of it is from wood.
Okay.
Because we had the craftsmanship. Because we had, even though we didn't have typographers, we had a skill set of people who could carve.
Okay.
And our, timber industry, wood carving industry was quite established. So
Okay.
doing those intricate details was nothing for the Sri
Yeah, for
Lankan
them,
craftsmen. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And so I believe that was the reason why the newspaper titles were so beautiful.
Yeah.
But as soon as it was being digitized, you can see a drop of this.
Yes.
Not even digital, but establishing of the newspaper, we can see these styles dying off. And I'm sure, as we all speak about, it's all about the economy, and having a newspaper title which takes half of your cover will definitely be dropped later. But there was definitely a time that Sri Lanka was just booming with newspapers, simply because they wanted to, each one had a message to talk. And of course this leads into the political situation and the socio situation of the country. So yeah, you can understand the political changes from the behavior of the newspapers within the timeline.
All right. And any lithographs? Were there any lithographs involved, like lithography involved?
Lithography, yeah. The photographs of most of them were lithographed, okay. I believe,
Okay.
And placed as a block in the center when they were
Okay.
composing.
Okay.
I have not come across lithographic titles.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted a clarification regarding the nomenclature. You spoke about consulting with literature professors to help name different terms for Sinhala. And they suggested using Sanskrit words because that's the root for Sinhala. So currently the terminology for Sinhala is Sanskrit words, is it?
That's right, yes.
Is it easier to consume those terminologies as students? Are those words something that are easily identifiable?
No, it's not. It's actually completely not in colloquial terms.
Okay.
So as a result, that was the reason why I wanted to do change. Now I had to, as a researcher, you have to balance both ends, right?
Sure.
So as even though the reason why we had to have the terms in Sanskrit was very clearly because the existing nomenclature was only for the medial vowel signs, and most of them were deriving from, it had different terms. Like for example, you had a combination of Sinhala, pure Sinhala and Sanskrit terminologies. So for example, if you say Dik Alapilla or Dirgha Alapilla, that is two different. It's Sanskrit. So when you use the word Dirgha, that is Sanskrit. So if you cannot have a set of letter features with another, pure Sinhala. So I wouldn't know what is pure Sinhala, because one is we are an island, and but of course, but there is an alphabet also called Elu, which is known as pure. But coming back into your question is, so what happened there is after the terminology was given, I did a test with non-experts, but who are familiar with typography. So I compared the terms given by the non-experts and the experts. I considered the professors to be the experts. And then I gave a balance on how to understand terminology that is already been used in typographic education. So, and based on the usability of the designer, those were the terms that I concluded, and I continued my visual analysis started using the colloquial, even though as a documentation I have the Sanskrit terminology. That's what I'm doing, because as you said, it works.
But still, if you're having two sets of terminologies, that would make it a bit more confusing in the long run, I'd imagine.
Well, what's actually happening is, even though we are giving the term in Sanskrit, you're teaching in English. So you get to use English terms. So like, for example, if you use Bandha Skanda, which is broken base. So which is, this is the place where I spoke about a curve-to-curve link of the, because how the professor saw is that they saw that the skanda is basically the base, is being broken. So wherever there is a broken skanda is the term. So, but whereas when you're teaching, I'm not using the word bandhaskandana, but I would say very clearly, you observe the curve to curve.
Is that for the benefit of the students? Would they understand it better? Because in Devanagari we have similar things when you have the Shirorekha, but it's also called the headline. And so I can see parallels over there, but why would you use the Latin term as opposed to the Sinhala term?
Because curriculums are coming in English, and I think that's one. And I'm also inspired, I completely got inspired from Jerry as well, because what he did is coming up with addition as the term, and he justified it. So similarly, what I thought is, okay, if I just start using it, everybody else is going to follow. So, and there is no better place that you can start this. When you are an academic, you can do this. But, and also, unlike India, we don't have that many design schools, especially focused on this subject. So this is going to be anyway the route, and if the students who are using, I'm sure Khatum is not using my terminology, but yeah, I'm sure he will have a different set of terminology, but initially that was the idea. We wanted to do a test on people who are using terminology on typography, but sadly, before Pathum, there was only one person who had been designing proper fonts for Sinhala. So, and I went and interviewed him, and he said, there is no term, I just use it. And because he was the only person, there was no reason for him to communicate a term to another person. That was the reason.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, terminology. Actually, I would like to go like a level sort of lower than that, and sort of what you have done over the years with your PhD and the work that you're doing here is sort of giving us a framework, and also people working outside, not in in Sri Lanka, but a lot of people interact with the script, developing knowledge and also developing fonts. So we actually have an idea of, as you said, there's lot of things to look at. Like if you're starting with something like this, before when you started the PhD, I think the only person who was actually doing research in typography in specifically Sinhala was Raphael by that time. And other thing that we see a lot in this, with the scripts, with the lack of sort of research and understanding in typography, is you actually have a good body of knowledge in linguistics and then printing history. Right, so you see this a lot, and I think even in Sinhala, for example, if you take this in case of Ola Leaf, so we have this sort of analysis coming from people who documented we have a catalog of all leaf manuscripts from the National Museum, which only have the text, right? We don't have the actual letter forms in this catalog, which is, if you think about it, it's weird, but but the angle that they're looking at is from a point of view of the content and the linguistics. So we are using that knowledge. You have used that knowledge, and Sumanthri's research actually covers a lot of areas, because you just don't have that knowledge with this sort of like broad view, and then those of us who follows can, and we have been sort of building up on that, now we can actually pick and choose points from the history and development of the script, because we know, exactly dates of, some of the typefaces that developed, for example, Janaka was able to pick up the Dutch press era and sort of like research it conclusively, and we were able to sort of set up smaller research projects which focused on specific areas when you know the broad picture. I think that is something in the region that for many scripts that we have to do, looking at the broad picture and sort of have understanding. I think right now, if someone walks to Sumanthri or one of us and asks, I'm interested in looking at Sinhala typography and doing a research, what are the areas that I can focus on? We have a clear sort of idea of what are the areas that we need knowledge, and also we know like some of the in the community who have interest. For example, Levi Leanvi, who organized yesterday panel with Sonora, like her interest has been from the undergraduate level. She's been looking at typography in the lorries and so street typography, but specifically focusing on lorry typography. So she's been actually like sharing the knowledge and building upon that. So I think that framework is really interesting, and sort of building up on that to the terminology. I think it's the start. Right now we can have this conversation, and we can we have to take into account sometimes the sort of global practice, and when we are sort of communicating, if I'm like communicating with Muthu about a specific problem that a Sinhala font has you worked on, how do we communicate that? And maybe this model of sort of visual analysis gives us a framework to sort of set aside some of the script specific or culture specific terminology and just focus on the actual letter forms. And to sort of like wrap up with a question, how do you integrate this knowledge and the work in the day-to-day sort of teaching and the teaching work and the modules that you teach here in the program? Because you run the program is not specifically typography, and the undergraduate program has its own sort of aims and targets. So how do you balance this research work and the knowledge? How do you bring that into the day-to-day or like modules, or what's the model that you work with?
Well, sadly there is no module. And there is no module that I can do this, very clear. And that's why I said right now my joy is with those kids. They're not kids anymore. Those adults there who are actually taking this subject, because they are the ones who are going to be the ones who will establish the field. As I said, I am just one person, and I know, like, when I started off, and I know this is not very common to the region, and that fear, all that is very clearly should be taken off. And the fact that you can do this is something that I'm telling. And I don't know where we are heading in for, but for sure, like how Jerry spoke to us on the importance of research, we can definitely, we're looking at areas that we can touch nationally. And so many things, I can already see Shanika's project going nationally, and of course, so many places. And what I wanted to show here is these dreams of mine. I couldn't achieve it, but I'm already achieving it through others. And surely this is what it is. You cannot do everything, but you just start somewhere, and the rest of it, the others will do it. And as a result, typography is going to help us. And thanks to like conferences, like seminars like this, we are able to speak up and tell and share our knowledge. And another issue that we have is, as I said, financial, is I was accepted to Reading. I was accepted to Curtin University. I also got at New South Wales, Australia. But I couldn't go, is simply because nobody gave me a scholarship. And surely, but I don't regret it at all, because this is, I told you, because I stayed back, I had so many other things that I achieved. And now with this knowledge, yes, you can, and it's more appropriate here. And it's interesting. Yeah. Any more questions?
But I just wanted to ask, would you have like a sample of those mastheads? That's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Human figures.
Yeah.
Do you have an actual piece to see?
No, not an actual piece. It's at the archives. Okay. But this is wood carved, by the way.
This is a wood carved?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is very intricate.
Yes.
It's amazing, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's very beautiful as well.
Yeah, but maybe I can share a scan with you.
Please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, I think a lot of the research work that you have done have actually collected materials, like actual digitized materials, and something that we have had an issue with is how to we share this material in a way that it benefits everybody, and also with the copyright restrictions and all these things. So something that we are trying to do here is, whenever we scan or get things from the archives here, we try to make sure that for the Dutch project, the Dutch typeface project, all the scans that we did, we managed to get them licensed under Creative Commons non-commercial, which makes it easier for sharing and also like disseminating. This is another issue that we have here, because a lot of the material, if you take like the monotype archive, has loads of Sinhala material, even like there's like 11 or 12 files, even more than like some other regional script. How do we sort of get this like access for the students as well in a meaningful way, and in a way that we can share things much more freely? So that is another situation, because we can't actually, it's not possible to see these materials. In some cases, at least having access to that digital copy.
And also the cost of it also,
yeah.
Getting the, the documents, and, to get Supun's data from the museum cost us nearly 150,000 rupees. That's a lot of money. And so, because they charge 100 rupees per scan, but whereas archives is not bad, but obviously if it doesn't, if we don't have it, we're going to lose it, because for them it's just the book. We see something else, which is the cover, and if the cover gets destroyed, they're going to cover it with another blank piece of cardboard. That's it, and that whole history is going to go off. So, okay then, thank you very much.